Ayn Rand supports voting, and I believe the problem with supporting voting and voting in any ways is that it validates a government. And it validates the right of the majority to tyrannize over the minority, okay? Because you're voting to say, I want to be part of the majority tyrannizing over the minority. However, the problem is, someone would say, well, if you're voting against the rights of the majority to tyrannize over the minority, the problem is that you're the majority tyrannizing over the minority. And if by voting, even if you're voting for, libertarian or anarcho-capitalistic views, you're legitimizing the government. And you're legitimizing the process by saying the process is okay and therefore I will take a part in it, okay?
Having already dealt with the issue about Rand's views on government, I'd simply say that of course voting is not inconsistent with her philosophy because her philosophy is consistent with government. So it's also consistent with voting people into government. Also, it's not the case that because you've elected some people, you are consenting to the principle of majority rule. Government doesn't have to operate on the principle of majority rule, and you could easily have a government that limited itself to defending your life, liberty, and property, and that did not do anything beyond that simply because the majority wanted it to do so. So I think it's wrong both in practice and in theory to say that if you're electing people, you're in favor of majority rule. It's false. No.
She supports voting Republican. No, I'm not saying objectivism now supports Republican. In fact, from what I heard of Leonard Peikoff, he supported voting John Kerry, for example, in the last election. And I believe when you choose the lesser of two evils, you're still choosing evil, okay? So therefore, I don't believe in choosing evil. And I believe in voting for John Kerry or voting for Republicans in the past is choosing evil, and it is choosing to compromise your views. And I believe that is absolutely what Ayn Rand is doing, is compromising her views.
It's certainly the case that she thought that Barry Goldwater had some good influence for the United States, but I think largely Rand was a non-joiner. She made speeches to Republicans. She supported, but she also criticized both parties in different ways. And, I think if you look at the way even objectivists today talk, in many cases what they're thinking of as the best policy is a policy of not so much supporting a party, but rather preventing a party that's even worse from getting into power. Keep in mind that people don't vote for parties. By and large, people vote for the party that they feel is the lesser of two evils, as you referred to in your video. But they don't do that because they want the lesser of two evils. It's because they don't want the greater of two evils. In other words, they're trying to knock out the greater of two evils. They might care that they're getting the lesser of two evils. It doesn't mean they like getting the lesser of two evils. There's a distinction there. And I think the objectivist position has been that you vote defensively, you don't vote offensively. You don't vote for something because there's nothing to vote for right now, as a practical matter in the United States. You vote against the worse of the two parties that you are pretty sure are going to form power. In the United States, given the electoral laws, it's pretty much jigged so that it's going to be either the Republicans or the Democrats that win some or all of the seats. And so, because of that fact, because that's the way the system's rigged, objectivists have largely taken the position that, well, okay, we effectively have two options in this country, and so we're going to vote against whichever party is worst. We're going to vote against the greater evil. It's not the case that objectivists are voting in favor of the lesser evil. It's the case that they're voting against the worst evil of the two, the Republicans or the Democrats. And so, for example, when Leonard Peikoff recently said vote Democrat, he didn't say because Democrats are great. He said because Republicans are worse. He's saying vote against the Republicans not because he likes the Democrats, but because the Republicans are sort of the front for the mystic movement, or the pro-mysticism movement, which he says has some life in it. It seems to have some momentum in the United States, whereas in contrast the Democrats, who seem more to represent the forces of socialism, if that can even be said to be a live force anymore, don't really have a lot of momentum. Socialism, collectivism, that kind of thing doesn't really have a lot of popular support, whereas in contrast the mysticism supported by the Republicans does have a lot of support, and so he's saying vote against the Republicans, and you do that in your country, in the United States, by voting for the Democrats.